Why is Charles Whitmore saved in your phone as Dad? Lauren Hayes held the phone perfectly still, but her voice had changed. 10 seconds earlier, she had been thinking about a board meeting, a dead battery, and a client waiting for her call. Now she was staring at a single contact that made no sense. Across the conference room, Jason Miller slowly looked up from the presentation console. His navy work shirt was rolled neatly at the sleeves, and a small screwdriver rested between his fingers. Because he is, Jason said. Lauren blinked. Charles Whitmore. Yes. The chairman of this company? Jason set the screwdriver down. Yes. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, morning sunlight reflected from Chicago's glass towers. Inside, the air conditioning hummed softly above the long walnut table. Lauren could hear the faint chime of an elevator beyond the doors. She had borrowed Jason's phone because hers had died 11 minutes before the most important board presentation of the quarter. He had handed it over without hesitation. No passcode. No questions. Just a simple favor from a facilities systems technician she had passed in hallways dozens of times without ever really noticing. Now nothing about him seemed simple. Lauren turned the screen toward Jason. You are telling me Charles Whitmore is your father? Jason's expression remained calm. Not by blood. Then what does Dad mean? It means he raised me. Lauren stared at him. Charles Whitmore was 63, the founder of Whitmore Dynamics, and one of the most respected technology executives in Chicago. Senior vice presidents prepared for days before meeting him. Investors watched his expressions across conference tables. Employees lowered their voices when his name entered a conversation. Yet Jason stood there in work boots with a scratched toolbox beside him, speaking about that same man as though corporate power had nothing to do with the relationship. Why does nobody know this? Lauren asked. Because nobody needs to. Before she could answer, the phone vibrated in her hand. The contact filled the screen again. Dad. Lauren looked at Jason. He is calling. Looks like it. Should I answer? Jason gave the smallest shrug. You are holding the phone. Lauren accepted the call. Mr. Whitmore? A brief silence followed. Then came the familiar voice she had heard across boardrooms for 3 years. Lauren. Yes, sir. Another pause. Why do you have my son's phone? Lauren's breath caught. Her eyes moved slowly toward Jason. He did not smile. He did not straighten his shoulders. He did not suddenly become someone else simply because the most powerful man in the company had called him son. Jason is here, Lauren said. I borrowed his phone. Charles was quiet for a moment. Then I suppose you finally noticed him. The words landed harder than Lauren expected. What is that supposed to mean? Asked Jason. The call ended. Lauren lowered the phone. You could have told me. Jason picked up his screwdriver. Would it have changed anything? Of course it would have. Jason looked directly at her. There was no anger in his face, only quiet certainty. That is exactly why I never told you. For the first time in years, Lauren Hayes had no immediate reply. Jason returned to the presentation console, tightened one final connection, and closed the panel. Your boardroom system is ready. He lifted his toolbox. Jason, wait. He stopped at the door. Lauren looked again at the dark phone screen. Who are you? Jason considered the question for a moment. A father who needs to pick up his daughter at 3:30. Then he walked out, leaving the young chief executive officer alone with a question far larger than the secret she had just discovered. 3 weeks earlier, Jason Miller had been one of the easiest people in Whitmore Dynamics to overlook. He arrived at 6:20 every morning through the employee entrance on Wacker Drive, carrying a faded canvas lunch bag and the same scratch toolbox he had owned for years. He greeted the security guard by name, held the elevator for the overnight cleaning crew, and usually reached the technical floor before the first executive coffee machine finished warming. Jason never seemed interested in being noticed. He simply noticed what needed doing. On a rainy Tuesday morning, he was replacing a damaged network panel outside the executive conference rooms when 2 managers approached. We need this hallway clear in 5 minutes, one said. Jason glanced at the open panel. It will be clear in 4. Make it 3. Jason nodded once. No argument. No wounded pride. He finished in 2 minutes and 40 seconds, tested the connection twice, packed his tools, and moved aside. Neither manager thanked him. Jason did not seem to require it. At 12:15, he sat in the service break room with a turkey sandwich, an apple, and a paper cup of coffee when his phone rang. The screen showed Emily. His expression softened immediately. Hey, kiddo. Dad, I forgot my science folder. Jason closed his eyes. The blue one sitting beside your backpack? Maybe. The one I reminded you about twice? A small silence followed. Maybe twice. Jason smiled. Your presentation is today, right? At 1. He looked at the clock. Emily's elementary school was nearly 6 miles away. I am coming. A coworker across the table shook his head. You have 18 minutes left on lunch. Jason wrapped his sandwich. Then I should stop wasting them. He reached the school with 4 minutes to spare. Emily Miller was 7 years old, curious about everything, and completely convinced her father could repair any problem in the world. Jason never encouraged that idea, but he never had the heart to challenge it either. You saved me, she whispered when he handed her the folder. No, Jason said, kneeling beside her. I delivered paper. You still have to do the hard part. Emily grinned. That sounds like something Grandpa says. Jason laughed softly. That is because Grandpa steals my best material. By 3:15, Jason was back at Whitmore Dynamics checking a projector outside Lauren Hayes' office. She passed him with 3 senior executives, blonde hair catching the afternoon light from the windows, her attention fixed on quarterly numbers. Jason stepped aside. Lauren gave him a distracted nod. Thank you. She did not look at his name badge. Jason did not take offense. At 3:30 sharp, he packed his tools and left to pick up Emily. His 12-year-old Ford pickup carried them home through Chicago traffic to a modest apartment where Bills shared refrigerator space with spelling tests and crayon drawings. Dinner was macaroni and cheese, steamed broccoli, and apple slices. Afterward, Jason helped Emily with multiplication while rain tapped against the kitchen window. What is 8 times 7? She asked. 56. Too fast. You asked a question. You were supposed to think first. Jason pretended to struggle. 47. Emily laughed. His phone vibrated beside the coffee maker. Jason glanced at the screen and smiled. Grandpa? Emily asked. Grandpa? Jason answered. Hey, Dad. 30 floors above Chicago, hundreds of employees knew Charles Whitmore as the founder whose decisions could change careers. In Jason's kitchen, Charles wanted to know whether Emily had finished her science presentation and whether Jason was bringing dessert on Sunday. Power had its titles. Family had simpler names. And Jason had spent years making certain the two never became the same thing. 2 days after the rainy Tuesday, Lauren Hayes discovered that the quiet technician she barely noticed knew more about Whitmore Dynamics than several people sitting on its executive floor. It happened at 7:40 in the morning, 20 minutes before a presentation for a major telecommunications client. The main display kept losing synchronization with the conference server. 3 engineers had already checked the cables, replaced an adapter, and restarted the system twice. Nothing worked. We have 20 minutes, Lauren said, setting her coffee beside the conference table. Tell me what is failing. One engineer shook his head. The hardware looks clean. Another said, it could be the server. Jason was passing the open doorway with his toolbox when a faint sequence of indicator lights caught his attention. He stopped. 3 flashes. Pause. 2 flashes. Pause. 3 again. It is not the hardware, he said quietly. Everyone turned. Gregory Shaw, Senior Vice President of Operations, frowned. Facilities has an opinion? Jason remained calm. Only an observation. We have engineers handling it. Jason nodded. Then I will stay out of their way. He started walking. Lauren looked at the frozen display, then at Jason. Wait. What did you see? Jason returned and pointed toward the network controller. The timing is wrong. The system is receiving 2 authentication responses instead of 1. Something is duplicating the handshake. One engineer stared at the lights. How can you tell? Because the second response arrives 4 seconds late. Gregory folded his arms. And you know that from blinking lights? Jason looked at him. I know it because I helped troubleshoot this protocol before Whitmore licensed the current version. Silence. Lauren's eyes narrowed. You worked on this architecture? A variation of it. Jason crouched beside the console, changed one routing setting, then asked the engineer to restart the connection. The display returned instantly. No celebration. No dramatic smile. Jason simply closed the panel. You should have engineering check the duplicate authentication source before tonight. Then he picked up his toolbox and left. Lauren watched the doorway long after he disappeared. At 9:30, she opened the internal personnel system. Jason Miller, Facilities Systems Technician. 5 years of excellent evaluations. No disciplinary history. Then she reached the education section. Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering. Master of Science in Systems Engineering. Both from Northwestern University. Lauren leaned closer. What are you doing in facilities? She whispered. The next document was stranger. Attached to Jason's original hiring file was a written condition submitted by Jason himself. No preferential placement, no executive referral, no disclosure of family connections unless legally required. Lauren read it twice. Family connections. Before she could open the archived supporting file, someone knocked. Charles Whitmore entered carrying a cream-colored envelope. You are researching Jason, he said. Lauren quickly looked up. How did you know? Because I know what people look like when they finally start asking the right questions. He placed the envelope on her desk. Her name was handwritten across the front. What is this? Something you should not open yet. Lauren frowned. Then why give it to me? Charles looked toward the skyline. Because one day soon, you may have to decide whether a person's value comes from the name everyone recognizes or the name history forgot. Lauren glanced at the envelope. What name did history forget? Charles gave her a quiet, unreadable smile. Miller. Then he left. Lauren remained still. She opened the company history on her computer and searched decades of records. Whitmore appeared everywhere. Miller appeared nowhere. But buried inside an old scanned photograph from the company's first year were two young men standing beside a folding table and a hand-painted sign. Charles was one of them. The other had Jason's same angular jaw and dark eyes. On the back of the photograph, almost hidden beneath a faded coffee stain, someone had written 6 words. David chooses the future after me. For the next 3 weeks, Lauren kept the cream-colored envelope locked in the bottom drawer of her desk. She never opened it. Charles had asked her to wait, and something about the faded photograph made patience feel more important than curiosity. But she could not forget the handwritten words on the back. David chooses the future after me. She also could not forget how much the younger man in that photograph resembled Jason. Then, on a bright Monday morning, the mystery stepped directly into her hands. Lauren arrived at the executive conference room 11 minutes before the quarterly board meeting and discovered her phone battery was dead. She needed to confirm a confidential scheduling change with her legal counsel before the directors arrived. Jason was already inside, replacing a damaged connection beneath the presentation console. Jason, may I borrow your phone? He looked up. Sure. He handed it to her without hesitation. Passcode. There is not one. Lauren raised an eyebrow. That seems unusually trusting. Jason returned to the cable. I do not keep anything on there that needs hiding. Lauren opened the phone application, but her thumb brushed the contacts instead. One name stopped her. Charles Whitmore. Beneath it was a word so ordinary that it felt impossible. Dad. Lauren stared at the screen. Jason. Yes. Why is Charles Whitmore listed like this? Jason slowly stood. His expression did not change. Because that is what I call him. You call the chairman Dad? Yes. Why? Jason placed the screwdriver on the table. Morning light crossed his angular face as he considered how much to say. Because he raised me. Lauren felt the pieces shifting into place. The hiring restriction. The unusual education. Charles's interest in Jason. The photograph. Charles is your father? Not by blood. Jason's voice softened. My biological father was David Miller. Lauren went completely still. David Miller? Jason studied her reaction. You know that name? Before Lauren could answer, the phone vibrated. Charles Whitmore was calling. She looked at Jason. Should I answer? You needed the phone. Lauren accepted the call. Mr. Whitmore? There was a pause. Lauren. Yes, sir. Why do you have my son's phone? The quiet certainty in his voice erased the last possibility that Lauren had misunderstood. She glanced toward Jason. He lent it to me. Charles sighed softly. Then I suppose the secret lasted longer than I expected. Why did nobody tell me? That question belongs to Jason. The call ended. Lauren handed the phone back. You could have told me. Jason slipped it into his pocket. Would knowing have changed how you treated me? Lauren hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Jason nodded. That is why. But you are his son. Yesterday, I was still me. No anger. No accusation. Just a truth delivered quietly enough that Lauren could not defend herself against it. Jason picked up his toolbox. There is one thing I need from you. What? Tomorrow. Do not see Charles when you look at me. Lauren glanced toward her office, where the unopened envelope waited. Jason, your father David knew Charles when this company began. Jason stopped. For the first time, his composure cracked into genuine surprise. What? I found an old photograph. Jason stared at her. Thomas never told me David had anything to do with Whitmore Dynamics. Lauren frowned at the unfamiliar name. Thomas. Jason blinked, then shook his head. Sorry, Charles. My father used to call him Thomas as a joke when they argued. Old family habit. Something about the explanation felt strangely unfinished, but the boardroom doors opened before Lauren could question it. Jason stepped into the hallway, then turned back. Whatever you found about my father, do not let Charles's name decide what it means. Lauren watched him leave. Inside her locked desk, the cream-colored envelope suddenly felt heavier, because Jason had just confirmed the one thing she had not expected. Whatever secret connected David Miller to Whitmore Dynamics, David's own son did not know it either. That evening, Lauren found Charles Whitmore alone in the executive lounge, watching rain gather against the 32nd floor windows. Chicago glowed beneath the clouds, headlights stretching along the streets far below. Charles had removed his jacket and loosened his tie, and without the boardroom around him, he looked less like the founder of Whitmore Dynamics and more like a man carrying a promise for too many years. Lauren stopped beside the window. Jason told me David Miller was his biological father. Charles did not turn. I wondered when that would happen. He also told me he had no idea David was connected to this company. Charles finally faced her. That part was my decision. Why? He remained quiet for several seconds. Because Jason spent most of his life trying to become himself. Charles sat near the dark fireplace. David was my closest friend. We met when neither of us had enough money to impress anyone. We worked from folding tables, drank terrible diner coffee, and believed good ideas mattered more than expensive offices. Lauren remembered the photograph. Then why was David erased from the company's history? Charles looked toward the rain. That answer is more complicated than erased. Try me. A faint smile crossed his face. You sound like a chief executive officer. I am one. Then listen like a person. Lauren sat opposite him. Charles explained that David stepped away when Jason's mother became seriously ill. Within a year, Jason had lost both parents, and Charles became his legal guardian. Jason was 14. I gave him a room, Charles said. He gave me a reason to come home before midnight. Lauren's expression softened. And later, I tried giving him everything else. Charles offered college expenses, a house, investment accounts, and eventually an executive path inside Whitmore Dynamics. Jason rejected every shortcut. He earned scholarships, completed 2 engineering degrees, married his college sweetheart, and built a modest life away from Charles's wealth. Years later, after Jason lost his wife and became Emily's only parent, Charles tried again. I offered him a house close to mine, Charles said. He said no. Money? No. A trust? No. Lauren leaned forward. What did he accept? Charles smiled, and suddenly his age showed around his eyes. Sunday dinner. Lauren waited. That was all. He also told me Emily needed a grandfather more than she needed another bank account. The rain whispered against the glass. Lauren thought of Jason leaving work at 3:30, carrying his scratched toolbox to an old Ford pickup. What she had mistaken for limitation had been choice. Why does he work here? She asked. Because David helped build something here, and Jason wanted to understand it without inheriting anyone's reputation. Charles looked directly at her. He made me promise that if he applied, nobody would know our relationship. He wanted his mistakes to belong to him. His accomplishments too. Lauren lowered her eyes. I already see him differently. Then be careful. Why? Because admiration based on hidden privilege is still another form of prejudice. The sentence stayed between them. Lauren looked toward her office. What is inside the envelope? Charles stood. Not money. Then what? A responsibility. He walked toward the door, then paused. And Lauren, the photograph you found was taken before Whitmore Dynamics had that name. She frowned. What was it called? Charles looked back. Whitmore and Miller Systems. Lauren's breath caught. David was your partner. More than that. Charles opened the door. There was one decision about this company's future that David never allowed me to make alone. Then he left. Lauren remained beside the rain-darkened window, remembering the faded words behind the photograph. David chooses the future after me. For the first time, she understood that Jason's greatest secret might not be the powerful man who raised him. It might be the quiet father whose name the company had forgotten. The crisis arrived the next morning at 9:12, hidden inside an email marked urgent. Whitmore Dynamics was scheduled to demonstrate its new communications platform to Meridian Communications before noon, but overnight testing had revealed synchronization failures across 3 regional servers. If the demonstration failed, months of negotiations and a 5-year contract could disappear before launch. Lauren read the technical summary twice. At 9:20, Gregory Shaw entered her office carrying a black folder. "We found the problem," he said. That was fast. Facilities connected unauthorized diagnostic equipment during Tuesday's maintenance window. It corrupted the server configuration. Lauren looked up. "Whose team?" Gregory hesitated for half a second. "Jason Miller's." 3 words. 1 accusation. 1 convenient answer. Lauren opened the folder. "Who verified this?" "Operations reviewed the logs." "Who specifically?" Gregory shifted his weight. "My engineering managers." Lauren closed the folder. "That was not my question." Before Gregory could answer, someone knocked. Jason stood at the doorway holding a tablet. His expression was calm, but Lauren noticed he had skipped his usual morning coffee. "Network operations asked me to bring you the maintenance logs." Gregory turned toward him. "This is an executive matter." Jason nodded. "Then I can leave." "Wait," Lauren said. Jason remained. She gestured toward the tablet. "What did you find?" Jason placed it on her desk. "Facilities connected diagnostic equipment Tuesday night, but our equipment never entered Meridian's production environment." Gregory gave a dismissive laugh. "Since when does facilities advise executives?" Jason did not respond. Lauren did. "Since facilities brought evidence." "Let him speak." The office became quiet. Jason touched the screen. 3 records matter. Timestamp. Credential. Routing path. He enlarged the first log. The configuration was changed at 11:43 Tuesday night. My team left the building at 10:18. The second record appeared. The command used an executive engineering credential. Then the third, and the routing request originated from the 28th floor. Lauren looked toward Gregory. His division occupied that floor. "Credentials can be copied," Gregory said quickly. "Correct," Jason replied. "That is why I checked the secondary authentication record." Gregory's expression tightened. Jason continued. "The command also required a physical security token. 4 tokens can authorize that level of change." Lauren leaned forward. "Do you know which token was used?" Jason paused. "Token 3. Gregory looked toward the window. Lauren noticed it. "Who is assigned token 3? "I do not have authorization to disclose the assignment record," Jason said. "Security does." Gregory exhaled sharply. "This is wasting time. We have a client arriving in less than 2 hours." Jason looked at Lauren. "The system can be restored in about 90 minutes if engineering grants temporary diagnostic access and works with me. You expect me to put a 5-year contract in his hands?" Gregory asked. Lauren remembered Jason's words from the previous morning. "Tomorrow, do not see Charles when you look at me." She looked at the evidence again. Not at Jason's last name. Not at the man who raised him. Just the facts. "No," Lauren said. "I am putting it in the hands of the person who found the problem." She called information security and authorized temporary diagnostic access for Jason under engineering supervision. Gregory said nothing. Jason gave one small nod. "I will need access to the 28th floor." "Granted." As he turned to leave, Lauren added, "Jason." He stopped. "Can you save the demonstration?" He considered the question. "I can fix the configuration. Meridian decides whether we save the relationship." Then he walked out. Gregory remained near the desk, watching the door close. Lauren saw something new in his face. Not confidence. Calculation. He now knew Jason had less than 2 hours before the independent security review could confirm where token 3 had been used. If Gregory could not change the evidence, he still had time to change what people believed about the man presenting it. And when he quietly picked up his black folder and left without another word, Lauren understood that the technical failure might already be the smaller problem. At 11:37, the Meridian demonstration was running smoothly enough that no one in the conference room would have guessed the system had been unstable 90 minutes earlier. Data moved across the wall display without delay. Response times held steady. Lauren stood beside the screen explaining the national rollout, while 3 Meridian executives followed the live results on their tablets. Jason remained near the technical station with 2 engineers, quiet and watchful. Then the conference room doors opened. Gregory Shaw walked in carrying the same black folder. Before Meridian makes any decision, he said, there is information the board needs to hear. Lauren lowered the presentation remote. This is not the time, Gregory. It became the time when an employee with an undisclosed relationship to our chairman was given access to executive systems. The room changed. One director turned toward Jason. Another looked at Charles's empty chair. Gregory placed the folder on the table. Jason Miller concealed that Charles Whitmore raised him. This morning, he received temporary access to sensitive systems. Now his own analysis conveniently points away from his department. Jason did not move. Lauren looked at Gregory. Are you challenging his evidence? I am challenging his credibility. Those are not the same thing. Silence. Lauren turned toward Jason. Show them what you found. Jason connected his tablet to the display. 3 records. His voice remained level. The configuration changed at 11:43 Tuesday night. Facilities left the building at 10:18. The command originated from the 28th floor. He advanced the screen. The authorization also required physical token 3. Gregory crossed his arms. Which proves nothing about who used it. Correct, Jason said. So information security checked the assignment record and access log. Another record appeared. Token 3 was issued to Gregory Shaw Monday morning. It was not returned before the configuration change. Gregory shook his head. Someone could have taken it. Jason nodded. That possibility was investigated too. Lauren looked toward the information security director seated near the end of the table. The woman spoke calmly. Our independent review confirms that Mr. Shaw authenticated into the restricted engineering suite at 11:38 Tuesday night. The same session initiated the configuration command 5 minutes later. No one spoke. Gregory opened his mouth, then closed it. Jason showed no satisfaction. The records should determine what happens next, he said. Not me. The doors opened again. Charles Whitmore entered. Several directors started to rise. Please stay seated, Charles said. Gregory turned toward him. Charles, you need to understand how this has been presented. Charles walked to the table. Jason asked me not to attend this meeting. His eyes moved briefly toward the man he had raised. He specifically told me he did not want my name protecting him. Charles placed an independent security report beside Lauren. So I am not here as his father. He looked around the room. I am here because he was right. The silence that followed was different from shock. It was the silence of people rearranging what they believed. Charles continued. Gregory will be removed from operational authority pending a formal review. Meridian will receive the complete technical findings. Jason disconnected his tablet. One Meridian executive studied him. After everything said about you, that is all you have to offer? Jason picked up his toolbox. Facts do not become stronger when you say them louder. No one answered. As Jason walked toward the door, Charles rested a hand briefly on his shoulder. Chairman and technician disappeared for one quiet second. Only father and son remained. Lauren looked down at the report Charles had placed before her. A second sheet had slipped from beneath it, yellowed at the edges. Across the top were words she had never seen in any corporate archive. Whitmore and Miller Systems, founding agreement. 2 signatures appeared below. Charles Whitmore, David Miller. Beside David's name was a handwritten notation concerning founder rights, followed by one sentence that made Lauren forget the Meridian executives were still in the room. Future succession authority reserved under Miller founder provision. Lauren found Jason 40 minutes after the Meridian representatives left, alone on the 28th floor beside an open network cabinet. Late afternoon sunlight stretched across the carpet, turning the glass walls gold. His scratched toolbox rested near his feet, Emily's small rainbow sticker still bright against the worn metal. Jason looked over his shoulder. Please tell me the system is not failing again. The system is fine. Then today officially improved. He returned to the cable in his hand. Lauren stepped closer. I owe you an apology. Jason stopped working. For what? For needing to discover who raised you before I started seeing who you were. He stood slowly. The server fans whispered behind the wall. You trusted my evidence today. Yes. That matters more. Lauren shook her head. It does not erase what came before. Jason studied her without judgment. Lauren continued. When you were simply the man repairing conference rooms, I barely noticed you. Then I learned about Charles, and suddenly your education mattered more. Your judgment mattered more. Even your silence seemed more interesting. She gave a small, embarrassed smile. That says more about me than it does about you. Jason leaned against the cabinet. Most people see titles before people. I am supposed to be better than most people. Then be better tomorrow. The words were simple, almost gentle. Lauren smiled. You make forgiveness sound like another performance review. Occupational habit. For the first time, the tension between them softened into something warmer. Not romance. Not yet. Something quieter. Respect without obligation. Trust without a title attached to it. Lauren looked at the rainbow sticker. Emily. Jason nodded. She said industrial gray lacked imagination. She has good instincts. Do not encourage her. My refrigerator is already covered in glitter. Lauren laughed, then remembered the yellow document still inside her portfolio. Jason, I saw another record today. His expression changed. About David? Yes. What did it say? Lauren hesitated. She could tell him about the founder provision, but she had only seen one page, without the trust documents or legal context behind it. It said your father had rights connected to the company that I do not understand yet. Jason looked toward the windows. Charles never told me. I believe you. He met her eyes. Whatever you find, do not protect me from it. Why would I? Because Charles does. That answer stayed with her. Jason checked his watch. I need to pick up Emily. She has decided we are building a model solar system tonight. How difficult can that be? She wants Saturn to rotate. Good luck. That is the correct response. Jason lifted his toolbox and walked toward the elevator. Before the doors closed, he looked back. Lauren. Yes. Thank you for listening today before you knew where the evidence would lead. Then he was gone. Lauren returned upstairs as evening settled over Chicago. She locked her office door, opened the bottom drawer, and removed the cream-colored envelope Charles had given her 3 weeks earlier. This time, she broke the seal. Inside were copies of the original founding agreement, amendments, and a trust document bearing David Miller's signature. Lauren read slowly. David's original ownership had changed over the years as Whitmore Dynamics expanded, but a protected founder interest and specific governance rights had remained in trust. The beneficiary line contained one name, Jason Miller. Lauren turned the page. A separate provision concerned succession after Charles Whitmore. She expected another percentage, another financial condition, perhaps another transfer of shares. Instead, she found a sealed letter attached to the document with instructions written in David's hand. To be opened only when my son has built a life he would refuse to trade for this company. Lauren stared at those words. Jason had spent years believing he was proving himself without an inheritance. The truth was far stranger. His father had designed the inheritance to wait until Jason no longer needed it. 3 nights later, Jason sat at Charles Whitmore's dining table with the cream-colored envelope resting between them. Lauren had brought the documents herself, but she had refused to open David's sealed letter. It belongs to you, she said. Emily was in the kitchen helping arrange chocolate chip cookies while Charles stood near the window, unusually quiet. Jason studied the trust papers. You knew about this? Charles nodded. Yes. For how long? Since your father created it. Jason looked up. And you never told me. Charles sat across from him. David's original ownership changed as the company grew, but he protected a founder interest and certain governance rights for you. He left instructions about when you should learn the truth. Jason's voice remained controlled. I am 32 years old. You could have trusted me. Charles lowered his eyes. I told myself I was honoring David's wishes. Sometimes I was. Sometimes I was simply afraid that giving you his legacy too early would take away the life you were building for yourself. No excuse followed. No argument. Only silence. Jason looked toward the kitchen, where Emily was laughing because one cookie had broken in half. Does this change her life? Charles answered carefully. Financially, yes. Jason shook his head. That is not what I asked. Charles understood. No. She still needs you to check her homework. She still needs Sunday dinners. She still needs a grandfather who makes terrible pancakes. Emily called from the kitchen. They are really terrible. Charles smiled. Jason finally did too. He opened David's letter. The paper had yellowed slightly with age. His father's words were simple. David had never wanted his son to inherit a chair merely because of his last name. He wanted Jason to build a life first, make mistakes without a safety net, become a father if life gave him that blessing, and learn whether respect could be earned without power. Jason stopped reading for a moment. Lauren watched him quietly. Keep going, Charles said. Jason continued. David explained that the founder trust gave Jason the right, when Charles eventually stepped down, to nominate a successor for consideration and approval by the board. Lauren's eyes widened. Jason read the sentence again. He gave me a voice in choosing the next leader? A decisive voice, Charles said. But not a throne. David hated thrones. Jason laughed softly through the emotion in his face. Months passed. Jason accepted a systems engineering position only after completing the same internal review required of every candidate. Lauren insisted on that process. Jason respected her more for insisting. Their conversations grew longer. Coffee became occasional dinners with Emily. Respect became trust, and trust slowly became affection without either of them needing to name it too soon. On a cool Sunday evening, Lauren joined Jason and Emily at Charles's home outside Chicago. Burgers cooked on the backyard grill while Emily chased soap bubbles across the lawn. Jason's phone rested on the patio table when it rang. The screen showed one familiar word. Dad. Lauren smiled and handed it to him. He is standing 20 feet away. Jason answered. You know you can just walk over here. Charles held up his phone beside the grill. I wanted to make sure you still answer. Emily laughed. Then Charles approached with David's old photograph in his hand. There is something we missed. He turned it over. Beneath the faded sentence Lauren had discovered weeks earlier was another line, nearly hidden by the coffee stain. Jason read it aloud. The future belongs to whoever remembers that people come before companies. Lauren looked at him. That sounds like your father. Jason smiled. I wish I remembered more of him. Charles quietly replied. You remember him every time you choose the same way he did. Jason's phone vibrated again. This time, it was an email from the founder trust attorney confirming that the succession provision had officially activated. Lauren glanced away, giving him privacy, but Jason read the final attachment twice before looking at Charles in disbelief. You knew about this part? Charles shook his head. Jason handed him the page. David had added one final condition unknown even to Charles. Jason could never nominate himself. The authority was not designed to make his son powerful. It was designed to test whether he could recognize leadership in someone else. Jason slowly turned toward Lauren. She went still. He said nothing. He did not need to. Around them, Emily laughed beneath the porch lights. Charles returned to the grill, and the phone screen faded dark. Jason had spent his life believing his father left him nothing. In the end, David had left him something far harder to inherit than money. The responsibility to recognize who deserved the future.